We didn't serve, but that's a bond. So we've known each other for 40 years.
Are we ready?
He doesn't, but he can't do the mayor.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the planning board meeting for the Borough of Oradell. It's a regular meeting. Today is Monday, November 4th, 2024, 7:30. This meeting will be held. Notice of this meeting was published in the official newspapers, prominently posted in Borough Hall, and filed with the clerk in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act. Roll call.
Mr. Kang.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Hines.
Here.
Councilman Carnaval.
Here.
Mayor Koth. Here. Mr. Scalcione.
Here.
Mr. Darian.
Here.
Mr. Fleggy.
Here. Mr. Carnaval, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next agenda item is the approval of the planning board minutes of October 1st, 2024. Any comments? I take a motion to approve.
Second? Or so moved, excuse me?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
No correspondence, and we'll move right to committee reports. Subdivision, site drainage, and soil moving. Mr. Carnaval.
So we do not have any applications for this evening, but we have one resolution to memorialize. It is resolution for calendar number S-133-24, soil moving application for 311 Beechwood Road. So I know the document was distributed today, but did everybody have a chance to review the resolution? And does anybody on the board have any questions or comments pertaining to the document? Steve, I don't know if you have had a chance to look at the resolution or no? Okay.
No, we just got it
Right.
for a half hour ago.
Okay. If nobody has any questions, I do have a couple of typos that I found in the document that I'll share with you later, Mike.
Okay.
It doesn't materially change the resolution itself. So just for example, the first line it says, has submitted an application for a soil moving permit. As opposed to soil permit, it should be soil moving permit.
Okay.
Okay, so just changes along those lines. I'd like to make a motion then to approve the resolution for calendar number S-133-24 with the amendment, with the edits that we'll provide to the planning board attorney.
Second.
Roll call.
I don't know who was here, so I'll just read it off and kind of let me know. Mr. Kang?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Councilman Carnaval?
Yes.
Mr. Scalcione?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mayor Koch?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
And Mr. Fleggy?
Abstain.
Thank you.
And that is all I have this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, business buildings and signage. Mr. Kang.
Did you sign that?
Yeah, I did. I'm going to give it to Vince. Have him sign it.
Does it matter if there are typos in it? Are they going to change?
Do you-
They'll change
They'll
those,
change.
and then we'll just switch them out.
Nothing to report, Chairman.
Thank you. Regional Planning Coordination, Mayor Koch.
Nothing other than the borough received its numbers for affordable housing requirements, which I believe is about 186 affordable units for the borough. So more to come in discussion on that.
Next is zoning. That's me, and I have nothing to report. And we'll move to master plan, open space, environmental, and circulation systems. Mr. Darian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a subcommittee meeting on, what's the date here? On the 7th of October. In attendance was our planner, Caroline Ryder, Francis Rainier, our other planner, myself, and several other board members. We discussed the survey. We have the draft surveys attached to this agenda tonight, and we discussed the calendar and what our goals are in terms of when we'll reach each milestone in revising the master plan. But right now, the focus is survey questions. So just to give a recap for the community, for anyone who might be watching, one of the goals of the master plan subcommittee was to create a survey so we can get an idea of how the community is feeling. When I say community, residents as well as people who live and travel through Oradell. So it's not necessarily residents only. How they feel about the borough in regards to master plan related issues. I mean, this is not a general customer or resident satisfaction survey. And then the type of questions is fairly narrowly focused, where you're asked to rank and rate between alternatives based on whatever the question may be or whatever the problem may be. So the subcommittee and our specialists put together these questions, and this current draft now tonight is being shared with the entire planning board, because we feel it's important to get your input also, because since you're members of the planning board and not necessarily on the subcommittee. And our goal, our next step, is to just discuss tonight some of these questions, and if you have any concerns or comments or you want to make any changes, we can discuss them tonight, and then afterwards the subcommittee will meet again, and we'll take any input from tonight, maybe input from the community, and develop a final list, and that will be shared via email to the planning board, and then we'll publish it through SurveyMonkey, and I guess Steve, the borough will be responsible for communicating the SurveyMonkey post. So we'll coordinate with the borough on that. Okay. So, having said all that background, I know that we all have a copy tonight of the survey questions. We have 29 questions. The first page is just a description of what we're doing. This is part of the re-exam of the master plan process. The first question is just general residency questions. So altogether, there's 8 questions. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns with anything listed here?
I just have a quick question, Greg. I think you said SurveyMonkey was going to be, I guess, the methodology of how the survey is going to be administered, but how will people know, how will respondents know, other than, let's say, a posting, I think you said here in Borough Hall, is there any idea of how we would disseminate the existence of the survey so that residents are aware of it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I was hoping to discuss this later, but we can dive right in at the beginning. Obviously, we can post on Borough Hall, we can post on Facebook with the Oradell residents. We can solicit both superintendents of the schools, the Riverdale as well as OPS, they have staff that works in the buildings and comes to the borough. We can work through any other group that may have an email distribution list that they might be interested in receiving information.
Yeah, I would recommend Oradell residents. I would, obviously try to get this out, disseminated as far and wide as possible. One other question I had, I noticed that obviously you had residents, but there are also, I guess, people in the business community who may not be residents, and then others that are not necessarily. Is there any idea of, are we looking to weight the responses here? Presumably with residents having, let's say, a greater weight in terms of what kind of feedback is provided as opposed to, let's say, somebody who doesn't live in town? Is there any idea of kind of weighting those responses?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't, we'll be able to if we need to. The questions will be anonymous, but we will know because it asks whether or not you live in town, and whether or not you have been here X amount of years. Where did you come from? You know, elsewhere in New Jersey, elsewhere in Bergen County, New York City, for instance. I'm reading question number 3. And based on those responses, we could look at some of your answers later on in the survey and you know, weight them if need be. But I don't envision that going to be a problem. For instance, one of the questions regarding pedestrian safety, I don't think that's going to matter. You know, there are some other questions when it comes to like density, housing density. I'm sure that's not going to be something that, for instance, we would take people who may be coming from, you know, Hackensack or some other community. Their opinion is the same as someone in town. But we haven't gotten to that point yet, and most of the analysis is going to be done through our architect, our
Thanks.
planner, DMR architects. Any other general questions, procedural questions,
Just
maybe?
very general. What's the rationale behind asking people who are not residents to participate in the survey?
I can see the point where, you know, some of their opinions may not be as relevant, but there are people who come to Oradell and need to park, and sometimes that's not convenient, and they need to walk around and find a place to eat during lunchtime, and sometimes that may be limited. So it's just, I think it would be interesting to see.
Could be store owners.
Store owners is another. There are people who own properties but don't live in the borough. You know, like they own rental, but they don't live here. So now we could analyze that completely separate, so we can have 2 groups of participants. But we wanted to have as broad of a search as possible.
So my only suggestion, I think there's value hearing your explanation in terms of how people engage with Oradell in different ways. I think that perhaps versus leaving it out there as a catch-all, does anybody want to take our survey? Perhaps some of this can be slightly tailored to, do you own a business in Oradell? Do you frequent Oradell for retail opportunities or work, or, something about ascertaining thoughts from those folks that may come to our community but don't necessarily own property here. I think there's value here in that explanation, Greg. I think we should just maybe try and target the questions a little bit more towards uses in Oradell.
I was actually... I'm sorry, Mayor, are you done?
No, I'm done.
When I was reading the questions, I was thinking, or at least I was envisioning, because I get the logic that beyond the residents, you may have a business owner who has a shop on Kinderkamak Road, or maybe even somebody who works for a business or works in Oradell, where I can see they're a much greater stakeholder in the process. I mean, to me, residents obviously first, but then maybe on a lesser degree, business owners who don't live here, people who work here every day. But I wasn't envisioning, let's say, more of a casual person who might come here once a month or once a year and just taking the survey. To me, I feel like that feedback is a lot less meaningful. And that's when I was reading through the survey, I got the logic, but I do think we should somehow differentiate between the two.
Yeah, I just think that there's value in somebody who says, yes, I come to your town, my favorite store, my doctor is there, or what have you, but I can never find a place to park. It's atrocious. I hate coming there because of this, that, or whatever. I think it's important for us to, understand things, because you may have a shop owner who couldn't be successful here because there are things we should be aware of, and if we want to embrace small business community, then those would be valuable points for us to hear. Because right now I think we can theorize that parking is underserved here. There are other things that may make a business's time in town less friendly than it could be. So I think that there is value in a targeted way to hearing about people's experiences.
I've been looking through the questions, and while we can easily determine residents versus non-residents, we could use at least one or two other questions to determine their vested interest. And I think we'll talk about that later on how best to do that, or possibly substitute out one of the questions. One of the constraints that we have, this is just in general, we have right now 29 questions, and we were advised to keep the number, in the low 30s, simply because people tend to lose interest after a while. Even if they have a status on the top telling how far they are along, it's 30 questions or 30 questions. So, and some of these questions are not yes or no, or let me just pick the right answer. You have to give us your top 3 out of a list of 10. So it takes some deliberating. So, Vince and Mayor, you make very good points, so we'll take that under advisement.
One other thing I was going to suggest, you mentioned about a list of things, and let's say picking top 3. In addition to the not applicable, I think we should probably offer an other where somebody could potentially write in something we might have missed. I know that these are some of the options here are kind of more intuitive, but then there might be something that somebody might say is we wouldn't have expected. I would.
I think it's there, isn't it?
Which page are you on, Vince?
Well, like for instance, question 21.
21.
Right? Or question 23, for instance, where I think there should be an other option where you could kind of write in something that maybe the survey didn't anticipate.
Okay.
As an option.
We have that.
Most of them have that.
Yeah.
At least the early ones. Other, please specify, right?
Yeah, we'll add it.
I think we'll look at some of those longer.
The problem, though, is that when compiling statistics, when you list other, you become a unique to your island, and you can't compare your result to other people's results for that question. So if you have, let's say, 5 answers, and then you can show, 10%, 20, 30, 40% pick this one versus 20% the other one. When you do other, you're kind of now dropping out of that, and because you can't use your other versus someone else's other versus a third person's other and combine them because it's probably different.
Well, the one thing it might show, though, depending upon to what level you're analyzing it is, if you have other that's written in with kind of the same category, you might see that there's something, kind of a theme that emerges there of something we didn't think about, and so there might be some value to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my suggestion is similar to Spence's, but maybe worthwhile. I don't know. I don't want to open a can of worms, but adding a 30th question where it's any comments. I don't know if you want to read through thousands of comments.
Yes.
But could be worthwhile to just hear something that we're just not covering through our 29 questions.
I actually, that was brought up before the meeting, and I've already added that. Other open-ended comments regarding items or concerns not mentioned. So thank you, Min. And usually what we do is at the end of the survey, we list just, non-sorted, we list all the comments, all the other just open-ended statements, because you can't really quantify, but it's good to show, and it's good to read through to see what people say.
You could also do like a data mining where you can see what words tend to come up more in those comments and see if those have any, value in kind of examining further.
Okay.
And then if we got thousands of responses, I'd read them all. That would be really good results.
Okay.
If we have further or more specific comments, Greg, we can just email them to you.
Yes.
So before your next meeting, you'd be armed with that to do
Absolutely.
a deeper dive?
So the goal tonight is just to discuss, but obviously, if you come up with something or you think about it this evening and you want to expand on something you said tonight, by all means, email me, and I'll add it to the list of questions, and we'll be discussing that at the subcommittee. Just to reiterate, this is draft questions. Once we get input, we're going to be meeting at the subcommittee level again, and then we'll be looking to, publish. So we still have time to change. These are not final.
What is the timing of conducting the survey?
Before Thanksgiving.
Or Thanksgiving? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm anticipating that a lot of our efforts through the reexamination will look at the B2 zone, yet there's not one question in the survey pertaining to the B2 zone.
Okay, so
In question 28, you kind of touch it, right? If that's what you're expanding the downtown area.
Well, that's the B1, right? The downtown?
B1 north, but if you're
But into
if we're going to
B2.
extend it,
I'm sorry, Tom, what
are you
question number?
referencing the B? Would that question be referencing the B2 zone?
Which question was that again?
28.
28.
To
Okay, yes.
Carnival's point.
I'm referring to the office complex, where I think that's going to end up being a lot of our focus in terms of bulk requirements and planning. So I know that's not a residential area, but I just want to make sure, I just asked the question, should it be included in terms of if we were to transform that area into something that's different to what it is today?
So that's a good point that you mentioned. We did discuss it, and we did come down to this question 28, which is, would you be in favor of expanding the downtown area along Kindercamac North to allow for residential units above commercial/retail, which basically is extending the overlay zone going north from Oradell Avenue, which it does go into the B2 zone. Mm-hmm. What we tried to do here is not make it so technical that people get hung up on, planning board issues, right? I mean, who knows what the B2 zone is and what an overlay zone is, and affordable housing, and what's the ratio and all that kind of stuff. So we put it in layman's terms in this question, but we kind of lost you. So I see the problem that we're running into. You want to focus on an area, but you're really not really diving into the area with questions. Not enough.
I don't know if a survey would be helpful or not, because I think knowing what we're up against with this new round of legislation, we have to make some important decisions about that area of town.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that it's office buildings, and
Right.
what will it be after we complete the reexamination? So I don't know if feedback from the community would be helpful or not for that particular area. I just saw that it was not included in any of the questions, because 28 doesn't really speak to that specific area where you have the major office buildings today.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did talk about it in the subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that. What's the best way to ask the question so that we get productive answers, so we can, you know what I mean? It's like, like for instance, we don't want to ask a question, in the affordable housing zone, should we have 6 units per acre for density, or should we go to 12 units per acre?
I agree with that.
It's like, that's abstract, and an average person is just going to check something that sounds good, and that's not going to help us. So I think, for instance, question 28, we could be a little more specific. When we say expanding the downtown area north, we should reference the intersection of Oradell Avenue and Kindercamac Road, heading north and expand the downtown section in there. What does it mean by expanding the downtown section? With the same zoning, So, as opposed to it's just commercial zone. But, it's a fine line, you know what I mean?
So, we talked about it, we can revisit it.
Yeah. And I think we should probably have an additional question.
Greg,
So if you can come up with maybe
I'll give
something,
it some
Steve?
thought. I think some can be tweaked a little too, in that there aren't a ton of, I guess, what's your perspective lifestyle? What are your perspective lifestyle needs, right? So are you good in single-family housing? Are you reaching an age where you'd like to stay in Oradell but don't want to remain in single-family housing? Has your work-life balance situation changed where you work from home now versus do you commute to another community? I don't think we have to add a lot of questions. I think some of these can be tweaked a little bit to speak stylistically to what people's experiences or desires are, and then I think that information is useful for us to say which bucket does it fit in terms of which section. Because if somebody's saying, oh, I really wish this thing were in Oradell where I could live, I don't have to take care of my house, I had amenities, I could, work very close by, and I could have more or greater access to mass transit than I currently do. I think those help us think about, opportunities if we need to think about creating them.
Greg, sorry.
To the mayor's point, if I may, question 29, I think it'd be helpful just to tweak the question to your point, Greg, that folks may not know what the current ordinances are. If it's 2 stories with 35 feet and 3 stories with 35 or 45 feet, it may just the phrase currently, the current ordinance is the west side of Kendicamack Road, retail +2, the east side retail +1, just so we know where we are.
Yeah.
And the other issue, as the mayor mentioned, parking. That's obviously a big situation. I don't know if what they currently are, but current regulations are X. Just a sentence or two to give some guidance to food for thought for the residents for feedback.
Greg, I'm sorry if I missed it. You said the survey had to be completed by the end of November or delivered?
Our goal is to publish the survey before Thanksgiving. Mayor, you made a good point. I made notes after question 5. Question 5 is, if you currently live in Oradell, what type of home do you live in? I think if we were to have another question like 6, we would insert a question, what type of housing you're interested in living in within the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
Something along.
Yeah, I'm just speaking loosely off the top of my head. I will email you some more specific thoughts along these lines and where, at least I think, that we may be able to categorize them in a currently crafted question if we just perhaps tweak it a little bit.
Okay.
But I think it's really about, how do people feel? If you're here for 40 years or you're here for 4, why are you here? What do you need to keep you here? What, is it? We don't want to get into the trivial stuff about schools, and parking's a sticky one because, I think we all know the answer to that one. There's no parking. But, a question may be served in order to increase opportunities for parking. Would you favor something like a structure if it were sited appropriately in the right zone to support business? I don't want to get too specific or too definitive, but again, kind of understanding the temperature of folks' thought and tolerance level for certain things, I think would help us understand how to tackle some of the challenges that lay before us.
And the other 2 things, if I may, if we're just kind of jumping here, the 2 bookends of town, the Blauvelt Museum or Mansion and the Waterworks, that's certainly on front of mind for a lot of residents. What do you think we should, what would you like to see. Obviously, we may not control those things, but if this is the opportunity once out of every 5 or 10 years to get either input or updated input from residents, I don't know if we can put that in there, if that would be helpful. Certainly if we're talking about the north end of town also.
That's a good point. We did discuss the Blauvelt. I don't know if we discussed the Hackensack Waterworks, but since that's not technically in Oradell anymore, right? It's owned by the county.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's around the Blauvelt.
I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, we all have opinions, right? Because I live near there, but from from what is our goal, right? Our goal, we're rewriting the master plan, right? So can we include, I don't know, that property, if we could or not? I would love to do that, actually, take on that plot and provide suggestions, but I don't think we have.
Bloyville?
No, Hackensack Waterworks.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do something with it,
But
because it's just kind of crumbling.
and then the Blauvelt, it's
Maybe that feedback could be forwarded to the county, to the owners now, right? I don't know if this is the forum, if that's a separate.
yeah, I don't know if that's our goal though.
Yeah.
And in regards to Blauvelt, that's an R1 zone, right? So, I don't think we have an interest right now, and that's not on the short list of things we'd want to make changes in the next round of the master plan. We weren't going to attack an R1 zone and break that up, So, we are, I mean, I'm interested in what people think about, that property. Maybe we can have a question about treating that as, spot zoning. But other than that, and then again, I mean, that's something we'd have to talk about the subcommittee. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you position it as an area that we're interested for spot zoning if,
No,
I mean,
I'm not advocating that. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of.
Right. I mean, I don't know if that's in the best interest of the growth in town, right? So, and just to be in full transparency, we can't control it even if we wanted to, right? We make recommendations, we build the plan, and then, of course, the property owners, they come to us with what they want to do anyway, so. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a comment, though. You want to get this out before Thanksgiving. Next meeting is December. So you're going to have conversations back and forth. Just be aware that you can't have a conversation with a quorum that would
Yes.
constitute a meeting,
These subcommittee
an
meetings.
email.
Yeah, our goal is to meet at the subcommittee. We're going to hash out 90% of what was discussed here. I'll send out the updated draft via email, and each individual can separately reach out to me with any specific concerns. We'll share it with the subcommittee. But yeah, our goal is to, we have a stake in the ground to publish before Thanksgiving.
So how long will it be available to the public to complete it?
That we haven't, decided. It's going to probably be at least 2 weeks. So we'll see. Some of that has to do with, we're not compiling the information, right? DMO architects are doing it, so they have bandwidth issues, I'm sure. But we'll work with them. Simply
I
because
think the number of responses we get, we may extend it a little bit. Try to advertise it more. So,
Is there
'cause the more we can get back,
Yeah, of course.
the better sense we're going to have. So,
One final suggestion I would have, when I did the master plan for the Bergen County Park System in 2018, we did that with Rutgers University, and we did a very extensive survey. One of the things we tried to incentivize people with was, I guess, a reward for completing the survey. I'm not sure what we could offer here, but maybe something to think about that, there's 10 giveaways or something to that effect to incentivize people's maybe they get a day with Steve Depkin or something like that.
They don't fill out the questionnaire?
Exactly. Just something to think about.
2% leniency on their lot coverage.
No, I don't think so.
Nice try.
All right, all good. What else, Greg?
One final opportunity if anyone has anything you would want to mention.
Question 19 about pedestrian safety, I just thought it may be helpful to add another kind of click to maybe focus on an aggressive enforcement or of current laws
Yeah, see,
or whatever, I don't know.
my concern is, it's scope creep, right? I'm definitely interested in that. I hear about it every day when my wife comes home. She, works at Traphagen. She walks across Tindercrack almost every day, right? But that we can't, the planning board is not going to make any recommendations to the OPD over enforcement. You know what I mean? I think that, if we want to focus on pedestrian safety beyond the questions that we have, we can add some. Like, for instance, we have the issue of Kinderkamak Road, the corridor, but we also have pedestrian safety on the side streets, especially on the side streets with no crosswalks. And we don't ask any questions if there's any issues there. I don't know if there's any issues regarding lighting, overall, just general lighting. So we may want to add one or two questions clustered around that pedestrian safety. If you want to, Tom, put something in writing.
Sidewalks or...
Just remind me, and we'll add one.
But I also think as a planning board, there are things that we know we have to make improvements on in town, like lighting around our public parking lots. So I don't think we have to ask anybody. I think we should, as a board, if we feel like that should be a component of the response to the plan. We know that.
Yeah, it's like...
We know that our parking lots need to be better lit.
Yeah.
So
it's we would used to say it's part of the job description. We don't need to call it out, right? It should be done.
That's a good point.
yeah.
Good comments. Any other?
Greg?
Yes.
I have a question. The survey is geared, obviously, you said to residents and non-residents, people who work in town,
Yes.
who don't live in town.
Yes.
Do you think it would be beneficial to have a map of the town attached to the survey so people know the perimeter? Like, so for example, I'm sitting here saying, is that Oradell or is that Emerson? Or is that Oradell or is that Paramus? And then if you have a specific question about an area, you could have a photo of the area so that people are very specific. They know exactly the area you're speaking of, because everybody in this room knows exactly the area, but the person who lives here, who works here, may not specifically know the section. So just the thought that perhaps a map may be helpful.
That's actually a really good comment because, I have a map, and we used it quite extensively when we came up with these questions. And yeah, right. How do I know? If I can't visualize, what they're talking about, how do I know what they're talking about unless I have something to look it up? So that's a good idea. I think we could figure that out somehow.
Thank you.
So I was just going to say, I think this is in really good shape, and I know there'll be some improvements, but I think the subcommittee should work to get it out by Thanksgiving, and you don't need to have a formal response from every member if it's not able to happen.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I just wanted to reemphasize, this is our task is to redevelop, rewrite portions of the master plan. This survey is going to help us in doing that. This is our survey to assist. The subcommittee worked very hard in selecting these questions with our professionals. Now that we have input from the entire planning board, I think that we are well along to having the final version. I appreciate everyone's help tonight. Chairman, if you could, I would like to open to the public within this section, if that's all right,
That'd be fine.
regarding specifically the survey.
Yeah, I think it's under new business, but why don't we do it now?
Because that would be, general comments.
So,
And
please.
I'd like to just limit public comment on the survey questions. So if we could, if any member of the public wants to come and voice your opinions.
Okay, Paul Atsunas, 50 Beverly Road. Pertaining only to the survey, now, I understand that you're making the survey, this group of the planning board is making the survey, right? Okay. How is it going to be distributed? I hope that it would be distributed with mailings, not just on the internet. I hope you could send out a mailing for people to answer the questions. Because a lot of people don't have, senior citizens don't have those kind of things, the internet, computers and stuff, some of them. So if you could please do that. And then pertaining to non-residents versus residents, I think that when you weigh the non-residents, I think it should be a lightweight rather than a residence would be a heavier weight on the emphasis on the survey. The other thing is to leave, and you mentioned somebody left something about leaving comments or outright opinions of what people feel and what they feel about the town. What do you like about the town? What you don't like about the town? Also. What else left? Oh, in regards to pedestrian crossings. Well, this last week I stopped at the Canoco station to let people walk across the street. And a young lady, I think with her father, was coming across the street. So I saw them coming across. Behind, there was a car there and did not allow the pedestrian to get to the other side of the street. They started moving right away and they left. So I beeped my horn because there was a police officer right behind them. So the lights went on and they got that one. So this is a thing that's happening at that particular spot where Park Avenue is. It's a very dangerous situation now. And tonight, as I was coming, there was another car in front of me. The valet guy made a left turn right across. It's the same thing that the lady on the council said. I forgot her name. I'm sorry.
Paul, survey?
Yeah. Well, these are the things that I saw. Okay. So that's what I'd like to see. And that's it. I mean, I just jotted these things down while you were talking because I didn't get a chance to see your survey. I haven't seen anything, only whatever you said here tonight. Right. I'm sure there'd be more questions if I read the survey.
So let me just, parting comment. I believe my email is listed on the borough website. So if you have any questions between now and the next week or so, you can always email me, and we'll take it under advisement.
Yeah.
Okay?
You might want to put a question in there on curtailing full lot buildings with underground parking. Whether we want something like that. Do we want to dig holes in the ground all over the town to have underground parking? You might want to put something along there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sam Trips is 327 Maple Avenue.
I'm glad to see this discussion happening. But in 2014, we did a survey, and it's extensive. And here it is. I mean, there's a lot of information in there, and it's been mentioned that that was 10 years ago, but I don't think things. People want the same quality of life 10 years later. They're not want to go backwards. So this is online. I actually have it scanned myself. You should read it. There's a lot, and they talked about the Oradell Mansion. They had that in here. I didn't hear anything about historic. I know you want to update. You're looking at the B2, but guess what? The Oradell is right there. Whether it's a different zone across the street, it's going to be affected. View shed, especially. So I would suggest adding that in there. People still care about them. Care about their building. This survey was 2014, and then the master plan was 2017. So you have the master plan with tons and tons of notes on what the people wanted and what they didn't. And here's a copy of the master plan. Read that too. Now you have 28 questions. There's some questions in here that are already answered. You talk about 42 feet. You're asking, do people want to go to 42 feet? The answer is no. That was proposed. And then there was pushback from the public, and it ended up with 35 feet. 3 stories on the west side, 2 stories on the east side. So you're kind of asking the same questions. That was the bump outs. People didn't want bump outs for safety reasons. You have snow plows coming down the street, crashing into them when they're full with snow. That's another one. But I read it. I only saw this afternoon. I really didn't get a chance to look at it at all. But and it's aggressive to have it now. In 1 month. There's a lot more that people care about than the way you have it here. Lost my train of thought. Yes. So the way they did it with the first survey, that was only 500 people actually completed the form. 750 people started it but didn't complete. So it's 150 people that we lost. So the seniors didn't get it. There are people with different skill levels that you're going to lose. So getting it out, not just online. I understand you want to do it online, and what's the name of that? SurveyMonkey. Yeah. This cost $14,000. I don't know what it costs to do that. Do you know?
I don't think it costs anything.
No? Okay. Well, things that are free aren't always that great. Anyway, so there's a lot more to it. Better questions. Like I said, the height. And people didn't want to see the business district expanded beyond Oradell Avenue. They didn't want parking garages. They didn't want taller buildings. They didn't want I'll use the word. They didn't want a transit village, and that's they asked that question again.
Yeah.
I don't think that people are going to say, yeah, let's do it. And it's also along with the transit village, you're talking about moving the train station. That was also asked, and that was also debunked. Or pushed back on, moving the train station up north.
So, Sam, if I could just mention real quick. We know some of these answers to these questions. Mm-hmm. The point is not to use these questions to do these items. Mm-hmm. The point of these questions is to quantify the response. So, for instance, 42 feet for roof height. That was something that was not acceptable last time. And if the survey comes back, 99% of the people don't want 42 feet, that's a very clear message that we can use to plan moving forward. So we know we're going to get no for an answer on some of these things. But the goal is not to get what we want. The goal is to get quantified opinion on both sides, yes and no. So that's the point of the survey. It's not a piece to some sort of document to convince everyone,
Right.
hey, this is where we're going. It's just testing the waters.
I understand testing the waters, but you as a resident know what the quality of life here is important to the people, I'm sure. I'm sure every one of you. So asking the same questions,
Sam, but part of it is we're required by the state to redo the reexamination on a fixed period.
okay.
I think part of that is to always try and obtain what the current temperature of the town's wants and needs are.
Okay.
Because I think it would be fair to say that sometimes that does change over time, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, I think asking the questions again reaffirms decisions of the past
Yeah.
or says people want to think differently about something. I don't know. I know that the one major factor, it's been 10 years since you mentioned the NESC survey. I
Right.
think Ed and I were both on the council when we did that. And it was very valuable at the time, but I don't know how relevant a lot of those responses still are with the current population of residents, because we have had a tremendous turnover. And it's not to suggest that the town should change. They were attracted here for reasons that made them want to come here. So I think it's really it is very least value a housekeeping exercise for us to continue to understand what that feedback is from the residents on things relative to the growth or not, or how things develop in town. Because again, different day and age with more aggressive developers around affordable housing lawsuits and other things, there are real things we need to be concerned about out there.
I know that's what's driving it. It's fair share housing. I understand that.
Well, it's not driving it.
Well,
It's something that is a concern now more so than before, because in my personal opinion, the laws have become a little bit more liberal in how this is applied, in that there's less consideration of the character of a community to provide a necessary need for a certain population. And that's all well and good. And I think everybody wants to do their part with that. But I think, again, part of the reexamination process is to really revisit, even if it's the same old 10 questions every 10 years, to say, what's the temperature today? Is it the same? Is it different? Because we want to be progressive as much as we want to respect our history and who we are as a community.
one thing I've noticed, as I'm researching Oradell going back to 1894, one thing that hasn't changed. People came here not because they didn't want to live in a city or urban area, and they were very protective of that. And I'm seeing it in the newspapers. I'm seeing it in the pictures. So that you evolve, correct, like you say, but you want to protect what you have. You don't want to lose. And we have plenty of examples. If you want to use 10 years from the past, all these buildings have cropped up all over the place. And, we can look at them and say, wow, we don't want that. Thank God we don't have that. So the protection is still there. People still say Oradell's a nicer town. But, maybe one day, it'll be, all the towns will be the same. And it won't matter where you live. But lastly, I'd like to suggest, we had, in 2017, it was June 9th, we had the first charrette for the master plan. And it was productive. People came out. It was heavily advertised. And the only negative about it is that we didn't take minutes. I mean, you could look at it on OPTV and see the, you want to see temperature? You could see how the people felt at that time. I would suggest a backup special meeting with minutes and have the public come out and tell you. Because really in the survey, you're saying it's anonymous, but when people are out there, they're going to talk and you'll see body language, So I would like to see that rather than just a simple survey. So anyway, there's plenty more to talk about, but I'm not going to take up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Having seen none, I close to the public. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Darian. Let's move on to the next subcommittee, Historical Preservation.
Nothing
Mr.
to report,
Cornwell.
Mr. Chairman.
Old business? New business, we already discussed. And open to the public again.
Well, it's on this 50 Beverly Road. You know, I go and I read a lot of articles in the library. I read an article which really hit me today. I don't remember if it was in the Time magazine or the Time the Time newspaper, the newspaper. They come up with an idea because they're going to lower the amount, you know, they want to make it more affordable for people to live, right, for affordable housing. And the new thing is now that they want to make small apartments, tiny apartments, they said, of 150 square feet with common areas. I would like to ban that before it even gets started here in any discussion. And there's no place like that. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you about this 32-year-old young man who is now 84, I believe now, 50 years later. He's 82. His name is Peter O'Connor. I hope you know who he is. He is the leading lawyer on the 1975 landmark decision for affordable housing, the Mount Laurel decision. He was 32 years old, and this is what he said at the time. I just want you to take this in. Peter O'Connor has simplified his view of life. We're each other's brothers and sisters, said O'Connor, 82. We should stop the fighting and start helping each other. If you're going to do that, it starts with decent housing. That leads to decent education. And if you don't have those two elements, it's hard to move to the next level, unquote. So he was talking the talk. So he's responsible for what we're doing now. And I just thought that you might want to know who started this all. 32 years old he was, young lawyer. Thank you.
Okay, I'll close public, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, everyone.